This show was recorded and produced on Pomo land. Content notices for this show include ableism, mild blood depiction, body horror, light bullying, classism, disembodied body parts, and a visual depiction of a disembodied organ, gaslighting, hallucinations, infidelity, mentions of death, mild self-harm, and references to sex. Flashing lights briefly appear during the first 10 seconds of the opening credits. We open in a carriage as your body is listing back and forth in time with the movement of the wheels. You feel your new wife's hand pressing into your own, squeezing your hand in hers as she has done so many times. You can make out up ahead of you, as dusk is falling, the lights of what appear to be a great mansion. Many little glimmering points of light outlining an immense estate. And your wife, the Lady Bluebeard, brings your hand up to her lips and presses a kiss to it, saying, "Welcome home, darling. I'm so excited to show you all that this estate has to offer." The carriage will rattle on up to the great entrance to the house. And as your wife helps you alight the carriage, she looks to you, and she'll look to the Animus first, who has control of the ring right now, though, as always, she speaks to all aspects of the bride. And she says, as she has offered so many times on so many other long staircases, "Darling, do you feel able to climb yourself, or would you like me to carry you up? It is, after all, traditional in some ways, on this, the after days of our wedding."
So the Animus is going to turn to their wife and say, "It's a generous offer, darling. You know, I love the way the estate looks as the sun sets. We'll have such a grand time planning parties and just enjoying the night air. But I'm actually having a rather good day. So I'll just take your arm," and she'll just reach out and kind of take Lady Bluebeard's arm. "And why don't we enter together? Equals."
As equals. And she'll offer her arm and help you up the stairs. You'll enter the home together. It's massive, and as many homes of its day, There are ornate dark wood panels and gilt doorknobs and beautiful tiled floors, large crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceilings with rather dim lights, actually. And as she leads you down the main hallway of this house, she pauses for a moment underneath the large portrait of a rather cruel-looking man with a long blue beard. The portrait is clearly a couple of 100 years old at this point, and Lady Bluebeard bears a small resemblance to the man in the portrait. She just kind of pauses there for a moment, looking up at him and then back at you.
The Animus is going to take sort of a slow look between the portrait and her wife and just kind of tilts her head and go, I'm not quite sure I see the resemblance, but in a tone that's clearly meant to be teasing.
Well, I should hope there isn't too much of one. He was, by all accounts, a terrible person, very cruel man. But, fortunately, that's long in the past and all behind us now. Come, dear, I must introduce the staff. And she leads you further down this main hall to where a group of people are lined up, ready to receive and welcome you. And she'll take a moment to introduce first Nora, the groundskeeper, who is a middle-aged woman with long brown hair that is worn up high in a bun, and a tone that, when she greets you, puts you just slightly ill at ease, saying, "Hello and welcome to our humble home." There is Fernando the butler, who is younger, has dark, close-cropped hair and gloved hands and speaks in a youthful, happy voice. Layla the chef, red hair, southern accent, seems extremely kind. And Theo, the newest member of the household staff, who is kind of generally responsible for the upkeep of many things, and looks young and posh and just a little bit arrogant. But Lady Bluebeard will finish the introductions with all of the staff, and she's actually going to suggest that you take dinner in your own apartments this evening, that you retire after a long day and just have a nice, slow dinner with each other, not in the dining room, but in the little parlor off of your bedchamber. And once she leads you up there, you will see that your rooms in this house are very lush. They're hung in blue velvets, and sort of decor is silk and gilt pieces and very, very fine ornaments of all different kinds. She'll help you sink into plush dining chairs, and there will be a veritable feast served in front of you. And after you're done eating, she will once again kiss your hand, then look at you a little longingly and say, "Well, darling, I know that we have had a long day, and it is our first night in the house together. Tell me, what do you feel up to this evening?"
Well, I've given this a lot of thought. This is as you said, it's a special moment. It's a special night. And so the Animus is going to get up and head towards the bed and sort of inspect it a bit more closely. And is probably going to sort of like give a poke to like the topmost layer, like the thickest blanket, and sort of turn to Lady Bluebeard and say, I will need this top layer tonight. Maybe if we roll it back a bit, I find that it might be a little harder to get out of bed in the morning. But I'm game for some fun if you are, dear.
And she will kiss your hand again, gently, lovingly, and look at you and say, "With you, darling, always." And we can leave you two there for the evening to have the fun you will have before you awake again in the morning, where she will gently help you out of bed into comfortable clothing, whatever it is you wish to do. And you'll again be served breakfast in this small parlor off your bedroom. And as your wife is gently making small talk with you, Theo hurries in and whispers something urgently in her ear before hurrying back out again. Looking surprised, she takes a moment to breathe and then says, "Goodness, I'm so sorry to have to say this, darling, but Theo has brought urgent word that, well, I'm needed on business in the city. It's a very urgent matter, and I'm afraid I can't delay, and, well, loath as I am to leave you on your first full day here, I am afraid I must. But I will return as soon as I may, and in the meantime," she fumbles in one of her pockets and brings out a large ring of many different keys, of various makes and sizes, painted, or perhaps not painted, but colored all different colors with strange patterns. She hands them to you and says, "These are the keys to every room in this estate, in the house and outside of it. This is your home now, and I trust you to explore in the ways that suit you best. Seek out all the knowledge you wish to have about this house, and when I get back, we can have a talk about everything you found here. Only," and she points out one key, which is small and rather plain, except that it is a striking shade of blue. "Don't go in the room that this key unlocks. It's in one of the topmost tiny alcoves on the top floor of the house. Plain wooden door, brass handle. You'll know it when you see it, but don't go in there. Please. It's just, well, it's better if we go in there together one day, if we do at all. You don't need to see that room. Do this for me. That's all I ask." And she leans in and kind of like actually pauses for a moment to see if you have anything to say in response.
Sweetheart, this is a lot of keys. Why are none of these labeled? And if there's an accident, and we need to quickly unlock a door, it's safety. There has to be at least 20, more than 20 perhaps, on this ring.
Darling, you are sharp as ever. I suppose living here my entire life, I simply hadn't thought of the need for a label, growing up knowing what keys go to what rooms. Tell you what, if you have trouble, find Nora. She's been here forever, and she knows what keys unlock which rooms. But maybe it can be a bit of fun for you, figuring out how to match them together.
Well, darling, if I'm the one matching them, then I will be putting labels on them when I'm done.
Well, be my guest. Be my guest. Change is a good thing, I think. Anyway, I'm afraid I must be on my way. This is a matter of great haste. And she's gonna lean in, give you one long kiss that's sweet and chaste, but also full of desire at the same time. And then she sort of nods her head to you and sweeps out of the room, truly making haste to wherever it is she's off to, and leaves you alone in the house to do what you will.
Well, isn't this strange?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at all of these. And the Animus is going to just jingle the keys again and just sort of loosely rifle through them, assessing them, mostly just sort of displeased at the lack of organization. There's nothing more frustrating than an unlabeled key ring.
Yes, but I think it's very romantic that little blue key is a room that she wants to go in together. Isn't that lovely? So romantic. I wonder what's in there. Do you think it's something a little bit spicy? Perhaps she understands our delicate sensibilities and doesn't want us to get over-involved without her.
if that was the case, I feel like she should have taken that key with her. I mean, I suppose there's nothing stopping us from looking and then relocking the door.
I know, but the temptation is so fun, isn't it? It's romantic.
But it's a bit plain.
By the way, it's a good thing that you allowed her to take your arm. It would have been very nice to be carried over the threshold like a princess.
We're more than capable of going up some stairs. We spent the whole ride in the carriage. We've got this.
That's true. We are more than capable.
Perhaps she can carry you up the stairs to the door with the little blue key.
Oh! Which, you know me. You read me like a book.
The Ingénue is sort of buzzing with that childlike excitement that has likely led her and the Animus into some hijinks, especially when they were younger, and goes, well, that's fun and all, but certainly there's something a lot more fun behind these doors with how interesting these keys look. Animus, why don't you choose something fun?
You know, that is an excellent idea. And so with that, the Animus is just going to... Actually, how wide is the key ring? Could the Animus just sort of just slide it onto their arm?
I think so. I think pretty easily. It has a lot of keys on it, and it's fairly wide, and you can wear it like a bracelet. I love that.
Yeah, that's what they're gonna do. After like looking over at their clothes, and they're just like, I don't want to really pull on these. These come off quite easily, which is great when we want them to, but not so much traversing the house and then everyone can see our underwear. So the Animus is just gonna put the key ring onto their wrist and just head out the room and, you know, just kind of keep their arm kind of close to their chest so it doesn't jingle too much. At first it was fine, but then all that jangling was kind of just like reminding them that none of these keys are stable. So I think they're gonna walk until they see like a door they don't recognize, and then just sort of just start futzing with the keys until they find one that kind of seems like it might fit. And just be like, I think this will go in here.
There's a door that seems to be carved of a shimmering pearl-like substance almost, and a key that you take out and it's carved from this same substance, which you realize on closer inspection is abalone. And the key feels just lightly damp to the touch. It's odd, but you're able to fit that key in the keyhole and turn it, and you open the door to find an indoor garden. It looks to be filled with rare and delicate plants, like orchids and lilies and roses with sharp-looking thorns, and also an entire collection of bonsai, situated about the room in various spots that kind of show off their shapes and forms. Near the entryway, there is a small table stocked with gardening tools. There's a trowel and gloves and a watering can. And in a small island in the middle of the room, there are 2 rocking chairs and a daybed. They all seem fairly dusty at this point and little used. And as you enter this room, you find that it is hot even for a greenhouse. Unnaturally hot. The heat, even in your first moments in the room, sinks into your skin, and you almost feel faintness and dizziness knocking at the door of your senses. But the room is yours to explore. What do you, all of you, want to do?
I think first the Animus is going to say, okay, well, we are going to label this key garden room -damp and unpleasant.
Is it damp and unpleasant, or is it sultry?
We shall make a
Maybe-
list of adjectives for both of you.
We can maybe put sultry on the back where I don't have to look at it. It'll be a surprise for our wife. damp yet sultry.
I think within, Mother does not say anything, but I think you all can sense her just shaking her head slightly, maybe in disapproval.
Mother, what's wrong? It's a garden. We love gardens.
We do, but look at those bonsai. And I think, I urge the Animus to walk us closer to the collection of bonsai.
You read my mind exactly, Mother. I was about to go look at those myself. And I also want to note that this temperature is far too high for some of these plants, those poor orchids. I wonder if we can get them relocated to a slightly cooler room. Those poor things will crisp up faster than a bit of beans in a pan.
And did you see the dust on that furniture? It's unsightly. You'd think the staff would be better about upkeep in here, no?
Maybe. Just, you are correct though, the dust is concerning, but I suppose if our wife was the one who keeps the keys and this is the only set, I
You
maybe
really
should have
think-
asked that before she left.
Do you really think this is the only set of keys for the entire house? If every door is indeed locked, how does anyone else get around? That's ridiculous.
No, you are correct. So the Animus is going to go over to the bonsai and is going to investigate a mysterious object. So I get to ask 2 questions. When I'm investigating a mysterious object, do I get like a base description before I ask my questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So the bonsai you see at first glance appear to be well cared for, but quickly on closer inspection you see that that's not the case. They have grown wild and rogue, escaping the limits of the forms that might be imposed on them by a gardener who takes care. But here they are twisted. They grow ensnarled with one another. They have not been cared for by a loving hand, but they've been left to fend for themselves. And in looking at the bonsai, you also notice the other flowers, which have seemed healthy and upright, are in fact wilting from this intense heat.
Look at that. No discipline.
I don't often agree with you, Mother, but if she can't be delicate with these, how can she be delicate with us?
These bonsai bend and bow like the bones of our own back. Perhaps she sees the beauty in us.
That's a good point. And there are chairs here to enjoy this room, make it a little bit more comfortable, rock and sit here for hours. And she did say we can make it our own.
I want to revisit the fact that you called this heat sultry. We are sweating. I cannot understand how sweat dripping down our back can be sexy.
It would take far too long for me to explain this to you, but sometimes the best things in life make you a little bit sweaty.
You don't need to explain sexual intercourse to me. I've been around for some time, you know.
Of course. I meant no disrespect. I just mean that, it's a little bit romantic, right? Get your blood up.
In situations where that is the intention, I think sweat is fine, but we are just standing here, sweating, and look at the plants, they're suffering. I don't see anything sensual about this at all. In fact, it is sad, almost neglectful.
Some embraces are stifling. Perhaps we can teach her how to hold us.
I should like that very much.
Animus, What questions are coming to your mind?
One question that immediately comes to the Animus's mind, especially with the conversation that they have been having with their sisters, is why did Bluebeard keep this item?
You sense that this room may have been used before your time by a bride of Bluebeard's, a former wife. You know that your wife has been married 3 times before, and that each marriage ended sadly in the unexpected death of her previous wives. You feel that Bluebeard kept these bonsai because they have been cared for with love by someone in the past, probably one of her previous wives, and that the memories are strong, and that perhaps Bluebeard herself didn't know how to care for these things, and yet, after her wife's departure, insisted on doing so.
Well, I think on the one hand, the fact that she tried to care for the plants is something, but on the other hand, I'm not a big fan, nor am I attracted to someone who doesn't seek help from others. Seeing the state that these bonsai are in, at some point you have to go get an expert or at least find someone trained in small plant maintenance. It doesn't even look like she tried anything to coax them back into a proper shape. I know we mostly deal with, our garden and our vegetables, and we didn't really get into ornamental plants, but even I know you have to put some wires around them, I think. They're
That
like
is
fancier
correct.
tomatoes.
Bonsai require a great deal of care and discipline and frequent attention to guide these plants into a proper shape. There's an art behind this, an art that has obviously been ignored.
And I think you have one more question to ask.
I think the only other question to ask would be, what memories does this item hold?
Animus, do you touch the bonsai as part of this exploration?
So I think like as the Animus has been looking at these bonsai and they've been having this discussion, they sort of feel like a sort of kinship with these plants and their state, especially with what the witch was saying about how it is similar to our own condition in our spine. And so I think they've just sort of been, as they've been conversing with their other aspects, just kind of lightly running their fingertips against like the path that the bonsai have taken on the bark.
As you caress this bonsai, as you run your fingers along the bark, you have the intense sensation that you aren't the first person to have done that, and you feel memories wash over you that aren't quite your own of a time when someone was lovingly tending this object, when your wife, Lady Bluebeard, sat in one of the wicker chairs watching another one of her wives tend and care for these plants in the ways that they needed. The room seems to come alive around you, and you see them seated next to each other on the daybed, taking tea together, holding hands, gently nuzzling one another. And then you see a time when the life leaves this room, when the plants begin to grow wilder and wilder, and suddenly the overwhelming sensation sweeps across you that these plants were never meant to thrive here, that they're too demanding somehow, too difficult to care for, too much. And you feel that not only the plants had that sensation, but the person who took care of them before you. And then the memories fade, and that is what you're left with.
Yeah, I think the Animus is going to take like a big step back and sort of angle away from the plants and say, well, we are definitely not too much, and I don't much care for that. I don't know what that was, but I think we're getting heat stroke in here. Possibly. What do the rest of you think?
Perhaps our first gift to our wife should be opening the windows, letting a little heat out, an education in how to tend for us.
I agree. But also, I think you already know how I feel.
I love seeing how she loves. It was beautiful, but at the same time, I don't like that she doesn't seem to learn. But still, we can make it our own. We can open the windows, as the witch says, and come back in here and do what we love best.
That is true. Change is a spindly thing, and we are used to change and how it affects us. I do wonder why she has kept her grief so stiflingly in here. So much so that it's affected the plants. It makes me wonder just why.
Perhaps she is sensitive and cannot bear it.
So, a question for you, groundskeeper, about this room. I know there are windows, but are they the type of windows that open, or are they those annoying and unsafe decorative windows that are just like kind of ground to ceiling that...
They are the type of windows that open. It seems that the latches are a little bit high, so they are kind of annoying in that you can do it, but it seems like it's extra effort, like unnecessary effort, to be able to open these windows.
Poor design.
Absolutely. Okay, first, one, where are they? And two, are we too short to just reach up and hit the latch, like, just by reaching up?
I think that the windows are probably on 3 sides of the room, and then there's a solid wall where you came in the door. And I don't know that you are too short to reach it. I think that as you begin to kind of go forward, maybe with that intention, the warmth of the room has truly begun to sink in, and you're feeling that kind of like, for those who know this term, potsy dizziness, like the feeling of just not being able to stand upright steadily, and your heart kind of racing, and your body maybe even feeling a bit weighed down, like there's sandbags attached to your limbs. And this is not new to the bride, but the room is kind of bringing these symptoms to the forefront, and you feel like it will be a challenge to open these windows.
I think then with that, and just the Animus, after having gotten that vision of the bonsai, is going to use their face ability, if I'm reading this correctly. Actually, I don't know if I can do that like that. What I wanted to do, okay, so let me tell you what I wanted to do, and then you can tell me if I can do it. What I wanted to do was, I want the Animus to like grab that watering can that I am assuming is empty, and basically just throw it at one of the windows. Like we'll make our own door and just sort of smash the glass that way to get some cool air in. And, if our wife complains, just say that, you need to get the windows replaced every X years anyway.
Absolutely. And what move did you want to use to do that?
I wanted to use my face move, the Brute, which is when you investigate a mysterious object by breaking it, ask a follow-up question about the object. Its essence still remains, but the item can no longer be investigated by any sister.
I love that. Yes. So I am totally down for you to take this watering can, kind of hurl it against the windows, which shatter, and let the cool outside air begin to stream into this room. What follow-up question would you like to ask?
So let me see. I think my follow-up question would be, yeah, it'd have to be that. So after having thrown the watering can, there's probably like glass shards kind of around the area. So what I want to ask specifically is about those glass shards, which is what about this item is odd or uncanny?
Hmm. I think that as you look closely, the glass shards each resemble a thorn, like the thorns on the roses. Each somehow shaped exactly like that, wider at the base, coming to a sharp, sharp, prickly point. Odd that each shard of glass would have broken in such a manner.
So I think with that, then, after sort of having done that, so I think I would like to propose a truth about this room. So I just need to detail what I think happened in the room, to whom, and why. So at this point, I think like the Animus is kind of talking to, all of their aspects, and it's just saying, so I think at this point it's rather clear what happened in this room, everyone. I think that our dear beloved, and this is said with heavy sarcasm, beloved wife was not and is not fond of things that take too much work, that do not remain within its preformed path, and the moment you step out of line, there are issues. And so I personally think that these plants were left to wither and waste away after our wife's previous partner passed away, because they were angry that things could not stay the same. And instead of honoring and cherishing their memory through maintaining it as a show of their own love, they instead decided to take their anger and grief out on these plants that look to her for support and guidance. And quite honestly makes me concerned about what the state of the staff might be here if that is how our wife behaves. And so not even like grabbing a handkerchief or anything, because the Animus honestly is still pretty pissed off. They're just gonna reach down and grab one of them shards of glass and just like grip it and just look at it and just say, I have, because of what I have seen in this moment, I don't have the highest trust towards our wife. So I'm going to say that shard of glass is our token of mistrust for this room.
And that shard of glass is sharp, so I'm going to ask you to mark 1 trauma on your sheet, Animus, as you kind of grip it and feel the sharp sides of it against your skin, just doing a little bit of damage there.
As the Animus holds this shard of glass, which we know perfectly represents the roses with their thorns in this room, can the witch, seeing that as an omen, look at the reflection in the glass and use a maiden move to take stock and see what stalks the bride from the shadows?
Absolutely, yes. I think what you notice in this particular room is a sense of uncertainty, not only from yourself, but from almost this very house and like the memories that inhabit it. That this room is a physical manifestation of someone perhaps wanting to show care and simply not knowing how and failing to do so. And that lack of care is what stalks the bride from the shadows and what may pursue you throughout this house.
Animus.
Yes, witch?
Is our hand bleeding?
Very lightly so.
Will you give a drop of our blood to the bonsai? For good luck. to make certain an uncertainty that this is our home.
You know, that is an excellent idea. So the Animus is going to walk over to whichever, you know what, I think the same bonsai that they touched earlier, and they're just going to, for a moment, or you know what, no, they're just gonna tuck that glass shard straight in their pocket, like I used to as a kid, and then just hold out their hand and let the blood sort of drip onto the soil of the bonsai, and just sort of squat down a little bit so it seems like they're eye level to the plant, and just sort of whisper, "Keep fighting. Don't give up."
And with that, perhaps it's a trick of the light, or perhaps you actually see the bonsai appear to grow a little bit greener and appear to take just a slight shape of difference that seems a bit more cared for in this moment. And Witch and Animus, please each take one of the small blue tokens that I sent you to prepare for this game.
Such a pretty blue, wow.
Now that you have explored this room, as you kind of make your way out of it again, having given some of yourself to the space and not knowing what you may receive in return from the house, Animus, who do you choose to pass the ring to in this moment?
I think as the Animus is leaving the room, they are also tying off their hand with a spare handkerchief, just kind of like, and while they're doing that in the mind space, they're just like, "Oh, Ingénue, why don't you take things for a spin for a bit? I'm a little tired."
Oh, goody. Maybe we can get somewhere a bit more comfortable and a lot less harrowing. People change. I'm sure we'll learn how much she has grown in these past years. And the ingenue takes the ring.
Yeah, so the ingenue is able to find a door that is paper white and also just has the faintest hints of a splatter of red upon it. And there you are.
This could go either way, but this seems the most interesting, and I think unlocks the door.
You are greeted by a library. A very large library, the kind where the shelves extend up to the ceiling and there's a ladder on a track to help access the books that are particularly high up. There are again several comfortable looking chairs in the room, deep and plush, covered in red and blue velvet. There's another daybed, similarly covered in blue velvet, small ornately carved wooden desks, and some larger reading tables in the center of the room. There are high windows along one wall to the east, and since it's still morning, light is streaming in through them. On one of the desks, there is a plain leather-bound book, a pen and ink pot, and a pair of eyeglasses neatly folded and put away in a little tray.
I think the ingenue leaves room for conversation, but it is like starting to inch towards the ink pot and the glasses in the book.
What do we know of our wife? Was she a big reader, an academic, or perhaps this room belonged to somebody else?
You certainly wouldn't describe your wife as an academic. From what you know, she is fairly well read and enjoys books, but she's not a great scholar of any one particular subject. So it seems this room might have been used by her, but really loved and enjoyed by someone else.
Is it a good sign that she keeps a remnant of her past brides? I mean, I think it's nice, but I don't know.
Mementos of the heart are nothing to balk at. I think it's quite touching to know that she embraces love like this. No?
Well, I was going to say, I think it only gets creepy if we find a statue of one of the previous brides.
Oh,
Books,
but wouldn't
sir.
it be romantic to have one of us?
I don't know. I've never been a fan of us being captured in art, standing so long for paintings or even sitting. It's just, I'd rather be doing something else. And books, though, are useful. We should look at those in a bit, I think.
Oh, a book of poems. You can be comfortable while you read that. It's a beautiful one for us.
Ooh. Yeah, I think the ingenue goes for the glasses first. And do we wear glasses already? I don't know if we established that.
I don't think you have officially decided to wear glasses, but I am totally down if you decide to wear them now and again for the purposes of reading or being able to assist with sight.
Yeah, I think I like that. I think the ingenue puts them on, sees if they're a right fit for looking through poems later, perhaps.
Yeah, they seem to be ordinary glasses, but they do in some ways draw your attention to a couple of books that are neatly in between book holders on this little table. And you see these titles, you're just like, your attention is drawn there. One says, On Hauntings, and the other says, On Dealing with Nervous Disorders. And then again, back to this plain leather-bound book, and one more, a book of love poems.
Love poems. By who? For who?
Do you open it?
I think the ingenue does and wants to see if any of them sound familiar from the poems the Lady Bluebeard probably recited to us.
Yes. So there are printed poems in the first several pages of this book. Familiar, if we're thinking real world poets, things like Shakespeare's sonnets, other comparable famous love poems. And then the pages begin to be annotated in Bluebeard's hand. She's made notes on these love poems, and towards the end, there were once blank pages, but Bluebeard has filled them in with poems of her own. Some which she has read to you, but some which you've never heard before.
What color is the ink?
Oh, the only color it could be, a deep, deep blue.
So the Animus is just chanting to the ingenue, recite them, wanting to just take some action here.
I think the ingenue looks for the poem with the most revisions, probably. Like, I don't know if Lady Bluebeard is like the scribble it out kind or like the rip it out kind, but anything that shows signs of her being dissatisfied with what she's creating and shaping.
Actually, towards the end of the book, she has dated many of her poems. Some are years old, far before your time, but some have been written since she has been seeing you. And you see there's one, perhaps the last one, that has been crossed through and annotated and rewritten many times on several different pages. And it's not a complete poem yet. You've never heard this one. It's not complete yet. And she seems to have stopped like midway through and intended to return to this project.
What are the vibes of it? Like, what kind of romance is it?
The kind where someone is trying to express a complicated feeling and just has to do it through a poem. Like, a little angsty, a lot of I love you and I'm into you, and a little hint of like something kind of grim underneath. Those are the vibes.
I think the ingenue looks for like a scrap piece of paper. Is there one?
Yeah, absolutely. There's several sheafs of blank paper around.
I think the ingenue, even though I mean, I guess she is a sort of poet, if you could say gardening is a form of poetry. And I think she would, at her best attempt, write the latter half of the poem. Something that matches the grimness, but not in a fearful way, but in a imminent way. Like knowing that something is about to happen, but perhaps we'll embrace it together.
As you write, at first, you think it's a trick of your mind, a trick of the outside noises coming faintly through the windows. But steadily, you recognize a noise drumming in your ears. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Faint at first, but growing louder and louder until it's like a drum, the sound of a heartbeat. Not your own, yet your own begins beating in time with it. Heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. So, this heartbeat has echoed in all of your ears, but especially the ingenues, as you are thumbing through these love poems and reciting the last one. What do you make of this drumming sound?
I think the ingenue immediately like puts two fingers to her neck to like measure her pulse because she's like, am I going to have a fainting spell? Worrying that she's overexerted herself by being curious and does not want to faint on this hard library floor.
You are no cat. The curiosity will not kill you. Could I make a maiden move?
Yeah.
I'd like to take stock. What stalks the bride from the shadows?
Ooh.
Ooh.
As the ingenue moves your hands to measure your pulse, you, witch, attuned to the strangeness of the world, notice that the books in the shelves have begun to move out of their own accord, sliding slowly across the ground until they are around you. You look to these books as the ingenue measures your pulse, and they snap at you, crocodile-like, revealing sharp teeth made of pages. And you realize that the books themselves, but also words, are haunting you, flooding your mind. Words, images, fears of what this household thinks of you, what Bluebeard truly thinks of you. Do you know enough to live here, provincial creature that you are? Are you enough? And you realize that what is stalking you has stalked previous brides. This question, this haunting question of are you enough?
Ingenue.
Yeah.
The Book of Poems. What is the last poem about the last bride about?
The ingenue thumbs and looks.
Many things Lady Bluebeard attempts to express in this poem. But what it is actually about is her love for someone she doesn't know how to love perfectly. Her questions about whether she can adequately provide care, about whether you are truly a match for each other. And yet a lingering strain of desire runs through it.
I feel like a marble being rattled in a jar. The ingenue, her eyes dart for a way out. How close are these books snapping towards her?
They encircle you, snapping at your ankles, maybe even tugging at little bits of cloth. They have not wounded you, but they are like hurricane-like around you.
The Ingenue remembers a time when she spilled ink on a cousin's favorite book, and how the words were blotted out and impossible to make out. So I think what she instinctually does is just get the inkwell and just start splashing at it like it's holy water.
And Keegan, I think I'm going to ask you to use the move Caress a Horror to do this. It's a little bit of a twist on that. So if you roll plus blood, we will see what happens.
It is the first roll of the game.
It's the first roll of the game.
Thank goodness I just have a 0 and not a -1. $11.
Ooh, yes, that succeeds. So the books, the ink splatters upon them like holy water upon someone receiving a blessing or an exorcism. And the books begin to quiet. They fall limply onto the floor, a library now on the ground, motionless.
Is the heartbeat still beaten, or is it just hers now?
The heartbeat begins to recede until it's faint in your ears and then no longer audible at all. And it's only the beating of your own heart, the pulse in your own skin and flesh. Yeah, you don't hear it anymore.
The mother looks at all of the books that have fallen still surrounding us, and she's going to ask the Ingenue, what are all of these?
And with that, may I please propose a truth, Esther, about this room?
Yes, please do.
This is, I think, a library of doubt and Lady Bluebeard's most internal thoughts. I think this is where she throws out the tensions and the doubts that she has about, I guess, herself being enough for the bride, and just the care and the responsibility that goes into a relationship such as this, with both a difference in ability and a difference in power, and how much that weighs. But I think because of perspective, it looks directed towards her, and perhaps it warps to fit whoever's in the room. But I think overall it's just turned from this place of safekeeping and hopes that whatever is in there won't leak out, but it's turned into a creature that will snap at whoever comes in indiscriminately.
And what token are you going to take from this room?
I think I would like to take a token of trust.
Amazing. And is there a particular object that you gravitate towards?
I think what's ever left of the poem that the Lady Bluebeard started and the bride finished.
Love that. Love that. As you exit this room, you open the door and find directly outside Theo, the youngest and newest member of the household staff. And he sort of quirks an eyebrow at you, and it peers beyond you into the room just a little bit, looking rather surprised, and says, "Is everything all right?"
The bride, lightly covered and splattered in ink, quirks an anxious smile and goes, yes, just a bit of exploring, and, clumsy as I am, I tend to bump into things, and, but, a lovely place the Lady Bluebeard has here. I suppose you already know that from working here.
Yes, though I've only been here 5 years myself, and, some of them go back much longer than that, to the time of Lady Bluebeard's mother and father living here. Are you quite sure there's nothing bothering you?
Tell them we're fine.
I'm doing splendidly. Just a bit worn out from all the exploring.
And he once again casts kind of a significant look to the many books on the floor inside the library, and then turns back to you and says, "Well, that's good news. You know, Lady Bluebeard's previous wife, may she rest well. She was prone to episodes, shall we call them, of nerves and pain. Often she couldn't be up and about the house, and, well, of course the Lady Bluebeard must have loved her. It's nice to see you up and about and thriving."
The Ingenue isn't as used to hiding her expressions as the mother, or honestly anyone else in the sisterly group would, and her eye slightly twitches a bit in annoyance, but she feigns something getting caught in her eye and says, "Well, thank you for that knowledge. She does not tell me much about her past, but I suppose that's what the marriage is all about, you know, just focusing on the present and looking straight ahead at potential."
Ingénue. Ask him who of the staff has worked here the longest.
Now, you've said you haven't worked here this long. Is there someone who's perhaps put in most of their days into this lovely manor?
Well, that would be Nora, of course, the groundskeeper. She's been here since she was a child. Her father was the previous groundskeeper, and she's grown up in the house. Must be at least 50 years here.
Wow.
Where can we find her?
Ah, yes, where can we find her?
Well, you know, there is the function in the ballroom today. I'm sure she might be there looking after things. Oh, did Lady Bluebeard not make you aware that there is a monthly tea gathering here, and this is the day on which it happens? You will learn these things soon, I do not doubt.
Oh, is there a dress code? I wore more for function than fashion, but...
You are the lady of this house. You may do as you please. And dress as you please.
Tell him he has something in his teeth.
The bride squints and says, "Oh, by the way, you seem to have something in your teeth." And Speed walks away.
I think the Fatale whispers to the rest of you. I don't think I liked his tone. Why was he saying all of this about the previous love of our wonderful bride? I thought that perhaps she was treated with love and kindness and softness, but all of her illnesses and her special needs, some of which we have our own individual needs that should be respected and cared for and adored. It sounded, when he said it, like they were problems. That's not love.
I didn't like it either. But Theo, she is young. Perhaps has not learned a way with words.
But 5 years they've been working in this home.
That is
Just
true.
because we have different needs doesn't mean we're any less valuable than anyone else. And trying to say that we're somehow better than she was because we're up and about. I mean, today, tomorrow we might need to take to bed. Then what?
Perhaps Theo is as poor a metaphorical gardener as they are a literal one.
Which I don't often agree with you, but today, you're making quite a lot of sense.
They laugh a little too long.
You can feel the trepidation kind of in the little recess of your mind, Ingénue, as you move through the house to go and explore. It feels different than the kind of pulsing warmth and positivity that you might have gotten from the Fatale previously. Mm-hmm. She's no longer feeling quite so comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And Keegan, Now that you have exited this library, who does the ingenue pass the ring to?
I think experiencing all this uncertainty and, at this point, quite horrifying things, upon seeing the Fatales shirking back at all of these things and just being plain scared like she is, looks to what the ingenue believes is the most reliable of the group and hands the ring to Mother.
I would like to go to the ballroom to find Nora.
Amazing. And ingenue, please take a token as part of the game. You have one token now. You can make your way through many long, winding hallways towards the ballroom, perhaps guessing, luckily, the right direction, or perhaps led there by something in your heart.
Intuition.
Intuition. Yes. Your intuition leads you to a room where the door is shut, but somehow you know to pick out a key, brightly polished, the length of a finger. And as you lift this particular key, you can hear voices chattering happily, excitedly. There's a large wooden door painted bright red with a golden handle. The key seems to want to go in this lock.
Before I go in, I think we watched as I walked to this room. I think the way that Mother carries herself is more confident and more self-assured, at least on the outside. And before I put the key in the lock, I place a hand on the door and lean in carefully, and I just want to listen. Because you said we heard voices in there.
Yes, you hear voices from the key, but you also hear voices from the room. People talking animatedly, the clink of a teacup on its saucer, the perhaps passing of a tray of delicacies. The faint sounds all come to your ears.
I'm going to put the key in the lock, and I turn the handle. But as I open the door, I want to just knock on it to let whoever's in here know that we are coming in.
There's a brief pause in the noise as you knock, and then the door opens. And you do see before you the ballroom, a vast room with a gilt floor that you guess can easily be transformed into a glittering space for music and dancing, or as it is now, a space for elaborate parties. This room even now has a dreamlike quality where the colors and textures seem both sharper and further away somehow than they are in the usual waking world. There is a wheelchair in one corner of the room, cushioned, partially covered by what looks like a lap blanket, dusty and unused. And the housekeeper Nora stands beside them, as underway in the middle of the room is a great tea party. People dressed in fancy outfits of finery, silks and luxury linens and beautiful china sets, little delicacies and pedophores all set on the table, tea sandwiches. It's quite the gathering of about 20 different people, at least.
Do they stop talking when we walk in?
They stop for a moment. All heads in the room swivel to you. There's a beat, and then they go back to what they were doing.
I think in that beat, I think I say, I'm sorry. I hope I'm not interrupting. And I sort of gaze around on all of these people. Do I recognize anyone?
You do. You don't know their names, but you do recognize about 7 people who were at your wedding to Bluebeard. It was a pretty fancy occasion with a lot of folks, mostly from her circles there, and you didn't get an introduction to everyone. But yeah, there's several people were present at your wedding.
I think all I say is, I wasn't aware there was a party.
And Nora, the housekeeper, kind of bustles up to you and says, our oversight. I'm sorry that Lady Bluebeard seems to have forgotten to tell you about this. But as the new lady of the house, of course, you are welcome here. My apologies, I should have thought to inform you.
It is all right. She left in quite a hurry this morning. It is understandable that she might have forgotten.
Yes, she does have so much on her mind. But you're here now. Is there anything we can do for you?
I am just looking around the manor. It is very large, especially from where I am from. But thank you. And I look at the table. Are there any open chairs, or is every chair taken?
Every chair is taken. The only chair in the room that is open is the wheelchair in the corner.
I look at the table. What kind of food is there?
There is fancy tea party food, little tea sandwiches of cucumber, tiny things, little French delicacy kind of treats. Yeah, those things.
I think I'm gonna walk up to maybe between 2 people who I recognize from the wedding, and I stand sort of behind their chairs. I don't want to reach over them, and so I just say, "Excuse me."
Ah, yes. The new lady of the house. May I help you?
Oh, I was just... And I just point at one of the sandwiches. May I have one of those?
Oh, of course. And they'll pass the little tray to you.
And I will pluck a sandwich off of it and look around to the table, and I think I move back to where Nora is standing, and inside my head, which the 4 of you can hear, I think Mother says something like, "Do you not think it's strange we did not get an invite to this, given this is our house?" No?
Yes,
And
Mother, I do.
eat the sandwich.
Yes, Mother, I think it's very unusual. And why is that the only chair available to us? Shouldn't we have a table all to ourselves with only the people that we want to see most? Shouldn't we be able to make this what we want it to be? Why does that chair sit with so much dust, unused?
I look at Nora and I just say, "Give me a moment, but I would like to talk to you outside."
Yes, of course. And she'll sort of hesitantly make her way outside to the hall.
And before I follow her out to the hall, I want to investigate this wheelchair, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to investigate a mysterious object. I would like to ask, whose item is this?
This is an item from Lady Bluebeard's first wife, which there have been 3 wives previous to you. And you are aware that Lady Bluebeard's first wife had a limb difference and also chronic pain, and therefore sometimes needed mobility aids to help her navigate the world. And you're pretty sure this belonged to her.
And so for my second question, the obvious follow-up is, why did she keep this? But my gut is telling me instead to ask, what about this wheelchair is odd or uncanny?
When you look closer at the wheelchair, it seems at first to be made of wicker, woven wood, but it seems to refract and morph and be made of shards of teacups, glued or stuck together somehow. A fragile chair that takes the shape of something normal, but underneath is something different.
I think very gingerly, the bride runs her fingertips across these broken cups. I think again inside our head, Mother asks, in what world is this comfortable? How strange.
In what world is it meant to be comfortable?
I don't know.
Perhaps it's meant as a sort of test to show our inner strength. We just simply need to show that we are strong enough to not need such a tool, to sit in it without sitting in it, if you understand what I mean. So to clarify out of character, that's the sort of thing where you sit in a chair, but you hover over it, which needs a lot of core strength. I've had to do that a few times for various reasons, but that is what the Animus is trying to get at.
You hear kind of a murmur of affirmation, Animus, from Fatale. And then she says, kind of after a pause, I wanted this to be romantic. I wanted us to feel loved and appreciated. But much like these teacups, I feel more like a piece of a collection. And I don't think I like that at all.
I have to agree, but I do suppose it is hard the day after a wedding to not be with our wife. Business calls. Business calls. She has to maintain all of this somehow, no?
It's true. Love does require giving and taking. And right now we are giving quite a bit.
It is just day one. I wouldn't fret. But I am worried. I hear you. And I think as all of the party guests continue their conversation, completely ignoring us, I think I feel a small tightening in my chest, a little bit of anxiety about almost mirroring the library about our own place in all of this. Why weren't we invited? Why did our wife never introduce any of these people to us? Did she not deem us worthy enough to meet her friends? And why do her friends ignore us? Wouldn't they be interested in their friend's new wife? And I think with all of these questions swirling around our brain and our thoughts, I let my fingertips graze the chair one last time, and I turn to walk out of the room. And I think I have to do something now, right, to leave before we can talk to Nora. Okay.
I will say, as you turn around and your fingers brush this chair, you hear once more this very faint heartbeat, and your own body seems to begin kind of aching and pulsing with it, like this ache within your bones, and the heaviness grows a little bit. As you are making your way towards the door, the tea party transforms suddenly. The cups turn upside down and cleave to the bodies of people in fantastical forms of dresses and suits. Candelabras spring to life. There is music coming from somewhere, and suddenly the guests begin to dance. And between you and the door, you see your wife appear suddenly, dressed in finery and extending her hand to you, as if to say, "Don't go out the door. Stay here with me. Dance."
I take her hand and I allow her to pull me into a dancing position. I feel her hand touch our waist and I bring my hand up to her shoulder. And I dance, but I think I'm gathering up the courage to finally ask, "What are you doing here? I thought you had work. What is going on?"
And she just looks at you and laughs a little bit and says, "Darling, this is my work, the work of entertaining, the work of being here with all of our guests and the pleasure of dancing with you. That is what I seek."
Why wasn't I invited to this?
Oh,
I didn't know of this party until I walked by and heard people talking.
an oversight. It's happened once a month for time out of mind, and I simply slipped my mind to tell you in the excitement of the wedding. I forgot it was today.
I see.
The Fatale whispers to the mother. But Theo said that this happens every month. How could she have forgotten?
And Mother whispers back, "I share the same sentiment. This is a regular event, no? How could you forget?"
I suppose my love for you has addled my memory. My apologies, dear. And she moves you about the dance floor, clearly wanting this to be a sweet moment between the two of you.
I think as we are dancing, I sort of get this sinking, dreadful feeling that whatever we are envisioning, I think Mother is more of a practical person and is like, this must be some kind of vision, something like this feels so very surreal. This can't possibly be real. As she spins us, like twirls us, I want to try to release my hand from hers, and I would like to escape instead of proposing
All
retreat.
right. So I believe I need to offer you a hard bargain or
Yes, you do.
an ugly choice. And in this moment, I think you know that it will take quite a lot of your energy to escape. That if you do, there will be a cost to your body, as there so often is. And this isn't new, but you know that you're going to be experiencing more pain, that your energy will flag, that perhaps your anxiety will increase if you leave now without finding these answers, and if you leave now having expended so much of yourself in this process of dancing. But you can do it if you want to. It's a price you've had to pay before, and it's not new to you.
I think Mother is inclined to take it only because the other option is to keep dancing and get tired anyways.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, like, in the, like, mechanics of the game, if this is allowed, but at least narratively, I think I've come to a conclusion about this chair and about this room, and I think Mother has seen all of the side glances that these guests have thrown us, and the almost casual cruelty of everyone's words to us so far. I think shrouds our joints and makes us feel weary. And the general feeling in this room of being unwanted, or at least being forgotten about, doesn't feel good at all. So I will take your bargain and I will leave. And I think the conclusion that I've come to is that our wife is very busy and perhaps these slip-ups just happen. But if there is a pattern to be seen, I think I have clocked that pattern. And I want to talk to Nora about it.
And I think I will ask you as part of that bargain to take one trauma, to mark one trauma on your sheet.
Cool. Let me find a pencil so that I can erase it, because I know there's also, you can remove trauma. So
You can.
Yes. Okay. Trauma has been marked. Do I get to keep the ring for this conversation?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So I tear myself away from our wife, and I probably make some kind of excuse, just like, oh, like, this has been lovely, I need to lie down, bye. And we walk out of the room. And when I close the door behind us, I almost like lean back against it to make sure that it's closed. And I imagine the sounds of the music fade as perhaps whatever vision that was fades.
The sound of music fades and you hear something like fine china shattering on the floor. Much of it all at once. But the door is closed, and that is all behind you now. Nora stands in the hallway, waiting for you, waiting for your questions.
Is there somewhere immediately that I can see that we can go to sit down?
There's a little alcove next to a window with a window seat.
Amazing. I'm gonna walk to that and sit down, and I think I just gesture to the other half of the seat to offer for her to sit as well.
She will wait for a second and then sit with you, yes.
Good morning. I've been told that you've been working here almost your entire life, that you grew up here.
I did. 57 years ago, I was born here, and, well, I haven't worked that whole time, but my father worked in the service of the previous Lord and Lady Bluebeard, and so I have been immersed in that world since I was a child.
May I ask you some questions?
Yes, you are the lady of the house.
And I think Mother pauses and turns inwardly to the rest of you all, and she says, I feel this is our best chance to find out some information, but I think we must be careful about what we ask and how we ask it.
May I make an unconventional maiden move?
Yes, please.
The first maiden move there is to care for someone. And I would like for the witch to offer care to the mother. I think one hand just curls around the other, and Mother, you see for a moment those fingers become gnarled and bent, almost as if every crook of the hand holds one of our secrets and holds it inward for us. And as the mother speaks of having to be careful in her own home, there's just this soft caress for a moment. And the witch says to the mother, the authority here is yours, to wield as you see fit.
Thank you. And I think very quietly Mother thanks the witch and feels your hand around my own, and the pressure of our hands, our fingers intertwining, I think gives me just that little bit of reassurance, that little bit of strength, that little bit of power. And I think the physicality of you four fades away as Mother refocuses back to the physical world. And she says, "Our wife did not tell us a lot about her previous wives. The house seems almost haunted with memories of these past women and their pain. How did they pass, if you don't mind me asking?"
And she sighs. Well, that's very sad stories. All of them came here with various ailments, complaints, conditions, and found things worsening over time. I could not say exactly what led to each of their deaths, just that there was a slow, inevitable, it seemed, decline. Of course, Lady Bluebeard's heart was always broken by the losses. But you are right when you say this house feels haunted. It is well known that the great-great-grandfather of the lady was no saint. The stories say that the ghosts of those he wronged linger here, inviting more to join their ranks.
Why did you stay? You didn't have to work here after follow your father's footsteps. What made you stay?
This is my home. And I cannot help but think the bones of it are good. That there is potential here if only I stayed long enough and worked hard enough. With the lady, of course, we could transform it. It could be different.
Different how?
Less stuffy, less filled with nightmares, and more filled with pleasant waking dreams.
Fatale whispers to the mother. But what of the parents? That should tell us what kind of person perhaps we are with, right? You're a mother.
And I nod and I look to Nora again and say, "You must have known my wife's parents. What were they like?"
Well, they were stern in their way, but still affectionate. Like the lady, they were business people, often out and about in the world, and she was frequently here alone growing up. I was older at that point, but I looked after her a great deal. Yes, her parents were typical people for their times, I would say. Consumed by their work, but still caring for their child when they could.
I think Mother pauses again, carefully considering her next words, for she knows the question she wants to ask. But she is feeling uncomfortable with the directness and bluntness of the question. But I think again her mind turns to her sister, the witch, and the power and the reassurance that they have given me. And so I steel myself and I look her directly in the eyes, and I say, my conversations with you and other members of the staff have me wondering, do you think me a burden? You do not speak of disability kindly, and nor has other staff members.
And I think you notice in this moment, for the first time, a slight tremor in her hands. Slight way that she's holding herself, as if there is a pain she is very quietly trying to address. She looks down at her hands and back up at you and says, a burden? No. No more of a burden than anyone else here. No more of a burden than I am to myself.
The mother turns inwards. How are you all feeling?
The Animus responds just with saying, I know we're all tired, but honestly, I could keep going. Just don't worry about it. It's like when we had to spend all that time getting all those weeds out of the garden. You just sort of push the pain over into a corner and you just press on. There's more to see. And I don't want that last room to just, it left a bad taste in my mouth.
I feel all right, but at the same time, there are quite a few things in this house that make me feel uncomfortable. Nora is doing a good job, and seems to perhaps be a potential friend for us. It's heartening to know that our wife is so passionate about her work. Hopefully she'll be as passionate about us and our care.
We've seen the tremor in Nora's hand, and she is answered in this roundabout way, that we are no more a burden than she is. And I think the instinct that the mother receives from the witch is this confusion at the notion of considering a gift to be a burden, as we are a gift.
The Ingénue wants to believe Nora's words, but is starting to realize that there is a difference between what people can say and what they choose to do instead.
And I think taking all of those thoughts, mother and the bride look back to Nora, and having clocked her tremor, I think I reach out with a hand, place my hand on top of hers, and I say, I hope you know you're not alone.
And I'm going to ask you in this moment to close out this chapter of our time together by caressing a horror, rolling 2d6 plus blood. Perhaps Nora's not a horror, but we'll caress someone near.
Plus blood. I have a -1, so that'll be an 8.
Okay. So that means Nora's attention shifts, or she's receptive to this, but only if you participate in some way. And I think that in reaching out your hand and in saying this kindness, it invites her, and she says, thank you. I hadn't considered that. Perhaps there is hope that the old bones of this house may grow new life. Thank you for bringing that here.
I think hope is very powerful. And truthfully, I don't feel myself as a burden. And given you are what one might consider the head of household, I do hope you can make it clear to the other members of staff that we are not a burden. You and me. And I think I'll squeeze her hand, and I will move to stand up.
Amazing. And she'll squeeze back, nod, and say, I will do my best. I will do my best. And we'll stand up with you. And with that, let's draw the curtain over this particular chapter of our story, knowing we will come back to explore more rooms next time. So we're going to come back into the story as Mother is wrapping up this sweet conversation with Nora, where you've talked about bringing hope to the bones of this house again, where Mother has declared that you are not a burden and neither is Nora, and has encouraged Nora to really embrace that and let the other members of the household staff know that neither of you are burdens. And you've shared this really tender moment, and she'll rise with you as you continue to make your way about this house. And if you desire, she will accompany you. And so in this moment, I want to ask, who does Mother feel led to pass the ring to?
I think as we stand up, Mother will link our arm through Nora's, and will, in that turn, invite her to walk with us as we continue our exploration of the house. And I think Mother turns inwards to look at the four of you, and my gaze falls between the witch and the Fatale. And I have a question to ask you two. What are both of you most excited about in this moment? And what are you most apprehensive about in this moment?
I think for the Fatale, it's the same thing. she's most apprehensive and most excited for. It's like two sides of the same coin. She's excited to find something that can keep her rooted in the fantasy of this place being good, this person being good, breaking the cycle, things that are very important to the bride. In her kind of provincial life that she left behind, family was a big deal to us. And it seems like it's almost the opposite here. And then I think she's most apprehensive that they're going to find just more things to break down the trust and comfort that they have placed in the Lady Bluebeard.
The witch is most excited for the mother, who has just not only offered someone comfort, but accepted comfort for what may be the first time. And the witch is most apprehensive that the entire bride, the rest of the aspects of the bride, could be lulled back into a sense of security.
And Mother will look to the witch and will pass the ring to you. And I think as I pass it, I say, let us continue our exploration, but please, let's be careful.
I will care for us, but my care will not extend to everyone. I think you agree that is for the best.
Sometimes we have to put ourselves first. I understand.
And the hands that clasped at the end of that conversation clasp once more, just a little tighter.
Where to next?
Where indeed?
What is your instinct in seeking out a new room?
Linked arm in arm with Nora, sort of bending to hold the secrets of the witch, but not clenching into Nora, almost mirroring that tremor. But this is a tremor of excitement. The witch will ask her, of all the spaces in this vast estate, which one best embodies my wife?
Ooh. Gosh, you just made that really interesting and juicy for me as a groundskeeper. Nora will spend a long moment in thought and will then say, every room embodies your wife to some extent. But perhaps if I had to choose, it would be the solarium, the sun room. I can lead you there if you would like.
Lead the way. And the hand not holding Nora's, because the witch's power is in hemalurgy, is going to tuck behind their back, and they are going to leave themselves a breadcrumb trail of blood, just in case.
Ooh. I think I'm going to ask you to mark 1 trauma on your sheets.
Okay.
As you leave this trail of droplets of blood on the tiles and the carpets, and Nora leads you slowly but surely up a couple staircases to a room, and Button, because you have this key, I'm going to describe it. There will be a room with a white door, a door that is not made out of wood, but a more organic material. and a key that matches it that is a bone-white skeleton key with a spinal cord as the shank and a smiling skull as the bow. And Nora will indicate to you that is the key to unlock this door. As you put the key in the lock and turn it, you can feel almost a vibration of energy before the door opens, and you see another well-lit room open up before you. There are high windows all along the western wall, and because it's the afternoon now, the sun is gonna go down and its rays are coming in that side. So there's quite a lot of light in the room. There is the usual furniture for a solarium: lounging chairs, a nice plush couch, and a couple of golden bird cages with a few singing birds, all in shades of blue, from light bluebird blue to deep purple blue. And there is a music box sitting on a low table in front of the sofa, and some ladies' pamphlets scattered about that table. There are several blankets neatly folded and thrown across the arms of the sofas and the plush chairs, and one small tray containing tiny glass bottles and a container that looks like some sort of an ointment jar. And you notice as you enter this room, despite all the bright sunlight and the expectation that it would be a warm space, you don't feel warm. This feels almost artificial somehow.
The witch will approach the bird cages. As an auspex, they will try to read the patterns of flight as the birds are confined.
And I think I may ask you to investigate a mysterious object to do that, or to take stock, your pick.
They will, actually, they will do something else, and they're going to take a trauma doing it. They are going to use their face move, the medium. They can spill blood to commune with the horrors of the room. So what they will do is pull out the poem that the Ingénue took. Did my wife, Bluebeard, sign her name here?
Yes, she did.
The witch will lick the word from the page, staining her tongue with ink and turning the text into nothing more than a blur. No suggestion of what remains, knowing that it is one thing to invoke a true name, and it is vastly more powerful to consume a name entirely. And as they do, they say, "By the pricking of my tongue, something wicked this way comes," and they'll give their tongue a paper cut.
Ooh. All right.
What I get from this, besides trauma, is to hear the whisperings about what happened here and 2 questions of my choice, which must be answered. Oh, and they get to ask me a question.
Okay. So we'll start with the whisperings of what happened here. The first thing you notice is your own body, that after the mother accepted a hard bargain, you are aching and feeling the effects of having spent so much energy in the last 3 rooms, and it's just a bit more difficult to navigate. You hear the strains of music as if they are coming from the closed music box, and it's the same song that guided you around the ballroom in the arms of what appeared to be your wife. You hear the singing of these birds in the cages, and you hear them whisper that they have no shortage of food, they have no shortage of water, they have no shortage of ornaments to play with, but they long for the world outside their cages. and they whisper to you that though their feathers look bright and glorious, if you truly see them, they're molting. I think they ask you, do you love us? And by us, you understand that they mean themselves, the house, your wife, all as one.
And before the witch answers the birds, the witch turns inward and asks, first the Ingénue, do you love us, Ingénue?
Why, of course, you're all I've ever known and had.
What does one do with what one loves?
You let them explore, you let them grow, you allow them to become the person that they wish to become and accept all the quirks that they bring, I suppose.
Young but wise. Animus, do you love us?
Well, I will say I don't love the fact that you've been bleeding all over the place after all that time I spent bandaging our hand. But I do also recognize the merit of your power. And my disgruntlement aside, I do love you, witch. You just frustrate me sometimes.
I apologize most truly. Animus, what do you do with what you love?
When you love something, you should let it grow. Let it, as the Ingénue said, let it explore. You should be happy with its decisions, whatever they choose to do. As long as they aren't, trying to eat paper.
Just a
that's
word.
love.
Just one word.
That's how it starts. Then you're eating whole newspapers.
Mother, do you love us?
Of course. Have I done anything to suggest otherwise?
Not once.
Then I think that matter is settled.
And what do you do with what you love?
Mother pauses and looks away for a moment. And then looks back. To really love someone or something is to know someone or something. You know all of them. You see all of them. The highs and the lows. All of their faults and their misery and their sadness and their anger and their joy and compassion. You see all of it, and you love all of it unconditionally. For those you love, you wish the best. And even though they may not always love you back, you must love that much more to fill in the gap when those who love you move away from you. Because if that love is reciprocated, they will always come back, eventually. Does this answer your inquiry?
And the witch takes in a defensiveness in the mother's tone They kiss the top of their own hand. And they say, I see you.
And I you.
And I love what I see. Fatale, dearest, most loving Fatale. Do you love us?
With all my heart, sister.
All your heart. And what do you do with what you love?
You cherish it. You hold it close, but not so close that it feels suffocated. You reward it with gifts. From fancy things and expensive things, all the way to things you cannot do without, like truth and honesty. You celebrate it.
You celebrate it. You cherish it, but don't hold too tight. You know them. You see them. You let them grow. You let them become, and you let them explore. If you love it, set it free. And they go to the bird cage. I love you, and they open the cage.
And the birds fly out, eager, and begin circling about the room, flitting from perch to perch, taking in this sunlight, ecstatic.
How does Nora react?
Nora has been in the back of the room, just kind of watching things unfold. And you see her looking up, almost in awe, with a smile like a sunrise breaking over her face. She looks wonderstruck.
This isn't a tense situation, but I think that physical representation of a love caged makes the Fatale feel tense. And I think she realizes that when the witch asks her what they do with their love. So, if I may, I would like to ask what traps have been laid here for the bride.
Yes. You are able to take in this room, the birds flitting about, and it strikes you that perhaps the sunlight itself is a sweet trap. This facade of a room that is made to comfort, that is made to lounge in, but this cold that grows moment by moment, more bitter and more piercing. It springs to your mind that Nora said this room reminds her most of your wife, and suddenly you begin to shiver and see your own breath as frost slowly creeps over the sofa and the chairs and makes its way out the legs of the little tables and creeps towards the birds. And their song quickens, becoming almost frantic, though they don't appear touched by the frost themselves. They're clearly aware of and distressed by its presence. And you feel that this sense of coldness, this frost, both physical and metaphorical, is like a trap laid for you in what appears to be a warm place, yet underneath is made of ice.
I think the Fatale, in barely a whisper, says to no one in particular, love is passion, and passion burns hot. So what could this be?
That not every embrace is passion.
shouldn't it be? When you're in love?
It
Even when
should.
you're angry. It should be full of something. This is more akin to nothing. This coldness, this darkness.
I agree. Even in anger, when those you love are fighting with you, there is still passion behind that. I feel if you do not feel passion, then you don't feel anything at all.
And I guess if this room has taught us anything, some embraces are cages. I wonder if she wants to keep us like these birds here.
Well, she could certainly try, and it'll end up like what happened to the room with the watering can.
Quite right, Animus. You are perfect. We could be birds together, she and I, building our nest. Yet instead she offers the cold of a gilded cage and its bars. We are treated like a weed when we are meant to be the apple of her eye.
Why is every room in this house cursed in some way? I think that alone is a warning. No? It's cold. And our bones ache.
This curse has the power to be a blessing. And I think, having felt small embraces by the house despite the horrors, I'd like to propose a truth about the room. This cold in this space doesn't emerge from the house, doesn't emerge from the mansion which has embraced us by small measures. Nora was right. The cold emanates from Lady Bluebeard. She is what turns the walls blue with ice.
And tell me what token do you take from this room? And is it a token of trust or distrust?
Joyful distrust. They take the music box.
And as you exit this room, music box intact, Nora following you, who do you pass the ring to?
Turn inward once again. I know you and I see you, Fatale.
I see you too, witch.
You have my love, but I offer you something even more precious. Do you know what it is?
A gift?
Yes. The most vulnerable gift a person can give. I offer you my trust. Take this ring of keys and do with it what you will.
I shall make you proud, sister.
You already do.
Fatale blushes and grasps the keys. And I think on the bride's face is a bright smile, rosy cheek, and a storm behind the eyes that doesn't match the smile. As they turn to Nora, thank you for coming so far with me. I really appreciate it. I don't think I'll need you to escort me throughout the rest of the house, but if you could point me in the direction of Layla, I'd like to talk to her about what is on the menu this week for food. I have a little bit of a delicate system, and I want to make sure that I don't suffer any ill consequences from being in a new place.
And what she says is, after thinking a moment, of course, I'm happy to do whatever it is you need. Layla, in between times when she's cooking, often spends their moments in the aviary watching the birds. I think there's an equal chance of finding her there or in the kitchen. It's not too far from here, just around the corner to the left and 3 doors down if you wanted to check there before the kitchens. I think that's the most likely place other than cooking.
Thank you. And please, remember what I said. It's important that you know that you're important to me, as I am the new lady of this house.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
She does kind of like a, not too fancy of a curtsy, but shows respect as she excuses herself. And I think as she walks down the hall, inwardly you all hear, well, sisters, should we go to the aviary? And also, I think it's important to say, why were those birds not in the aviary to begin with? Animus, I imagine you're the most cross about it. That's just bad organization, but also it's, well, in Mother's words, it is neglectful as well.
That was going to be my precise complaint. I think at this point, we need to get out the map of the grounds in the rooms of this building and go over with our dear wife about how things should be structured. At this point, I'm beginning to wonder whether some of these doors aren't functioning in a manner this large. The conflagration would just... No, those birds shouldn't be in there. And also, sisters, have you noticed there's a persistent trend with birds and cages and being confined? It's unsettling. And I would just like to remind all of us that we do still have that window pane shard in our pocket. Just mentioning it.
I think like outside, she just kind of taps it to make sure that it's like still readily accessible. And then inside you hear, yes, I quite agree. And, I don't know, I feel as though our bride has been a bit obsessed with being the one in charge. And while we love a gentlewoman, all of us, it's very romantic, of course, there's a certain amount of independence that we've had to have. Our body doesn't always make it easy for us to live day to day. And it feels like, I don't know, like our lady wife might expect us to resign ourselves to only her care rather than being independent. That's the one thing I'm not seeing anything of in these other women. Whether or not they were free to do as they pleased and to govern their bodies the way that we're used to.
She who is so cold wishes to be the sun and wonders why things wither and die beneath her touch.
I am just glad that the rest of you are starting to see the things that I've been saying for quite some time now. But I also I admit that I am apprehensive and perhaps a little bit saddened that my gut feelings might have more truth to them than not. Sometimes there's no joy in being right.
Ingénue, should you like to look at the birds for a while? Or would you like a snack?
I think we've had a bit of enough for birds today. Let's get something to eat to fuel ourselves from all this activity.
Quite right. The bride, I think, then moves and glances into the aviary just to make sure that Layla's not there. Does like a quick scan of the room, but doesn't enter it.
Layla actually doesn't appear to be in there. And if you wish to make your way to the kitchens, you may do so. Down a couple flights of stairs, which is getting to be a little bit more challenging now that you've spent a lot of energy and time in these strange rooms that are so draining. But you can make your way to the kitchens, which are, by contrast to the solarium, a warm space filled with fire and enchanting, yummy smells of food, with Layla, a person who is red hair, rather fat, and going around, bustling around the kitchen, turns around and says, "Oh, hello there to the new Lady Bluebeard. It's nice to see you down here. We haven't gotten many visitors, honestly, so it's really lovely to have somebody else in this kitchen."
Really? No one ever thanks the chef during these lavish treats and moments and bowls and...
Well, you know how rich people are.
I'm starting to find out. How long have you worked for my wife?
Oh, about 10 years now. Maybe 11 now that I come to think of it.
And do you enjoy it here?
Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting question. At times, yes. It certainly isn't a boring place to work. But between us, this house is a little strange. And, well, if I didn't need the money so badly, I might look for another place to work.
That makes sense. It has been a bit difficult to navigate, lots of effort, not the best upkeep. Is Lady Bluebeard often away?
She is frequently away on business, yes.
And how did the other wives fare with such an unpresent wife?
Well, to be honest, I think they were a little lonely. And again, between the two of us, sometimes it didn't go so well. Her being absent, them being lonely, them having some needs that really needed a partner alongside them to help care for. Being left to do everything by themselves was hard, I think. I tried to do what I could, but I couldn't do everything.
I think the Fatale takes stock of, not takes stock of the move, but takes stock of the moment and what Layla is saying. And they kind of lower their head in thought. And I feel like as they kind of decide what they're going to do, they raise their face and their eyes narrow slightly and their mouth comes apart ever so gently. And they feel a blush rise to their cheeks looking at this very kind of sumptuous figure before them. And she leans forward and places a hand on top of Layla's hands. I'm no stranger to the things that a wife would want to do, that her wife being gone would make more difficult. I really hope that you and I can be friends and get to know one another better. And you can maybe guide me in the ways of this huge, huge house and this large duty before me. I'd love to know the truth about my wife as much as you have, especially if that might mean that you and I can become better acquainted. And I'm using my spider face move.
Ooh. Can you describe, are there any extra parts to that we should know, like a role or anything?
No, it says when you trap a servant or horror with your feminine wiles, they will tell you a secret about either the house or Bluebeard. And then I have to mark a trauma if I want to ask a follow-up question.
Okay. Layla smiles at you. And you get the idea that they are no stranger to being desired, and that maybe even they've had some encounters with previous wives. She'll put her hand on top of yours and say, "Well now, ma'am, you did just get here, but I hope we can get along. You'd like to know about your wife, I take it."
Only the truth. I can handle it. I'm not squeamish, and I recognize that I'm in this for the long haul. I'd rather go in with an educated decision than a blind one.
Well, this is just my read of things, but if I were to tell you the truth from my perspective, it's that your wife is a complicated woman. She is who she was raised to be. From what I take it, her parents were the kindest, the warmest of people. And if you grow up in an environment where there's not so much care, sometimes you have to fight to become a person who knows how to care. I think she's still in the middle of that fight, that struggle. I think she'd like to be a person who knows how to love, but I don't think she's quite there yet. Again, the truth as I see it.
I think the bride looks even closer and leans in a little bit more, feels the weight of the front end of them in their lower back and hips, their knees kind of buckling a little bit under the pressure of all the walking around, and feeling their joints kind of not cooperating with them in this moment as they're trying to carry off this very kind of sexy pose in front of this person they're attempting to enthrall, but continues anyway and takes the hand and holds it. I do know that I just got here, and I'm not trying to abuse my power with you at all. Don't think that you owe me anything just because I'm saying lovely things to you about your beauty and about how important you are to this household. I hear you saying that my wife is perhaps someone who would love to learn how to love. But I must confess, in every room I've been in, I've seen nothing but evidence that people have tried to show her. How strongly do you believe that she's fighting for this reality to change?
As strongly as she knows how. And I don't think that's as strongly as you know how.
That's fair. Thank you for your honesty. I do hope we'll become better acquainted. If you'd like. Do you mind if I look around?
Not at all. Please be my guest.
Inside, you all hear, "Well, I've done my best." She
Ask
fights
her.
as strongly as she knows how. I mean, that's not exactly inspiring. No fairy tale says the prince tried as hard as he knew how to try to get Rapunzel down from the tower. Like, that's not... I don't know. Perhaps I'm just too stuck, but...
No, we are Excalibur, and she is too weak.
Don't we deserve better?
We do.
I think after a pause, Mother kind of like... Mother's eyes shift to the Ingénue, and then to Fatale, and maybe on behalf of Ingénue, Mother says, "Ask her what is for dinner."
Pardon me, Layla. What is for dinner? What have you prepared for this evening?
She makes to answer and then stops themselves. Well, I was gonna make roast chicken and potatoes with some caramelized onions and carrots. But what would you like?
Actually, it's pretty close to what I wanted. But could I have chocolate mousse for dessert?
Be my pleasure.
Inside, you all hear, I don't know, I'm rather fond of Layla, personally. She seems like quite a lovely person. What is that? And I think the Fatale's eyes fall on the row of knives and cutlery and things like that as they start to try and look a little bit closer at the things in this room. I think the glint from the knives is kind of what wakes her back out of this kind of fog of being, taken in. And she starts to kind of more explore the room, starting with that area.
Yeah, so you can see the sharpness of these knives. You see a vast array of cookware, from frying pans and skillets to little soup pots to sauciers, all of these things. Small little spoons, huge ladles, a grand stove and ovens, and a large fireplace that just radiates and emanates warmth. There's a large table in the middle where Layla has been chopping things and kind of sous chef preparing meals. This kitchen is the most normal room in the house that you've encountered. And the only thing that seems off about it is that you hear faintly again this heartbeat. This faint heartbeat. It doesn't seem to be pulsating from anything within this room as it has in other places, but it's like an echo in your ears, again and again and again.
Is there anywhere that it sounds a little bit stronger in this kitchen than other places?
I think honestly closest to the door. You get the feeling that this room is almost insulated from whatever it is that is going on in the rest of this house by perhaps the energy and the intention of the person who spends most time there. And this heartbeat is an intrusion into that insulation and those boundaries that have been placed there.
Fatale notes that and recognizes that the warmth and attraction and openness that they have felt from Layla is the most normal interaction they've also had since arriving, and kind of marks this down internally with the others as a safe haven, depending on whether or not we end up staying here forever or it's temporary. And I think she looks around to see if there's anything that looks out of place in here. Like perhaps it belongs to someone else or was put here by someone who is not Layla.
I think the one thing that looks out of place is a long blue knife lying next to the knife block. And the fact that it's blue is in and of itself an interesting thing, but the metal also looks older, fouler somehow. This is a sinister looking object, and one that is clearly not used for cooking.
I would like to investigate a mysterious object.
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask, why did Bluebeard keep this item?
You have this strong impression that this item is an heirloom, that it's been in this house for many generations, and Bluebeard kept it in that way of something that's been handed down that you maybe don't want, but has so many stories behind it, that has so much family emotional baggage, and you just don't know how to let it go. That's why she kept it.
Inwardly, you all hear, so I'm gathering that, much like the Animus suggested, our wife doesn't seem to have a very strong sense of what is appropriate. This doesn't appear to be a regular knife. And I know nothing of cooking. I mean, I'm far too pretty to cook. But clearly, even I know that this is inappropriate to have in a kitchen. Knowing what we know about, well, her ancestors and the potential habits that we've only heard rumors of, this could be more nefarious than I think perhaps I expected. I'm feeling quite at sea, sisters.
I mean, we have 2 pockets bare minimum. I really should have paid attention when we got dressed this morning. There are more pockets somewhere on this outfit. But if we could fit that glass pane in one pocket, we can surely fit a knife in another and then find an empty planter and put it in there, or find somewhere else to dispose of that. Honestly, I'm concerned it has some sort of rot or fungus.
But this is what I mean. What could be on the blade that could rot?
Ask Layla.
All right. Layla, I have a question. This knife doesn't appear to belong to the rest of your cutlery and cookware. Is there a reason that this is here? Shouldn't it be in a glass case displayed on a mantle?
Oh, that thing? As I understand it, it's lived several places in the house. I'd try to keep my distance from it. Lady Bluebeard, wants it out of sight in places she doesn't ever go, and she really never comes here. So, I get the honor of housing it in this room. But, yeah, that thing, it's scary. I have a distaste for it.
Would you say that it's fear or temptation?
Well, those things can often, be 2 sides of the same coin.
Indeed.
Ask if Layla fears us.
She takes a couple of steps toward Layla, kind of pocketing the knife as she goes, hoping that she doesn't kind of see her do that, and trying to distract her with her gait. Are you afraid of me? I know I'm quite different than the other wives.
Do I have reason to be afraid of you?
I don't think so. But logic isn't always a leader in situations like this.
Then no, at the moment, I'm not afraid of you.
Wonderful to hear. Have you been afraid of any other wives?
Can't rightly say so. Your wife, on the other hand, a little bit of a different story. But, all of her previous wives, may they rest well? No, they've been lovely people.
So she at least has good taste.
The very best.
Well, I mean, that's slightly better than what I thought it would be, no? I feel still disappointed. But a little bit better, knowing that we have one friend, maybe 2, if Nora stays good.
Why did you pick up the knife?
Because I feel like the Animus and I had a bit of a spat earlier, and I wanted to make sure that she felt good. Hiding those in a potted plant somewhere, I think, is a good idea, both to keep us and our wives safe, as well as to maybe foster an open conversation with our wife soon. If she notices that it's missing, we can maybe judge whether or not she hides it because she is embarrassed and ashamed of it, or hides it because she might want to use it.
Either way, I've tried to see the good in everything, and I don't see any good in this knife. I'm scared.
Ingénue, I would laugh and I would tell you that you are being a child. But right now, perhaps you're the wisest of us.
I think Layla intently observing you, maybe picks up a hint of this fear, especially since you've been asking them about fear and desire. And they say, if I may be so bold, I think the answers to your questions are going to be in that room your wife doesn't want anybody to go in. And you may be able to make your decision about whether you want to stay here or part ways if you take a peek in there. Didn't hear that from me.
Do you know if any other wives have looked in?
I don't. I'm sorry to say.
Fatale, ask her if she's been in there.
Oh. One more question before I leave you, at least until dinner. Have you been in the room?
No, I've only peeked through the keyhole.
What did you see?
A stone floor. But it's not so much what I saw, it's what one can hear. Don't tell me you've never heard the heartbeat.
You can hear it too.
Yes.
That's reassuring.
Is it?
Well, it means we're not, losing our hold on reality. This does bode poorly for the state of the house and the perhaps nature of our wife. But I'm not afeared, for we still have options. Right, witch? Between the two of us, I'm sure things will turn out well.
We have in our pockets everything we need.
Mother looks at you quizzically.
I suppose we should be on our way.
Do you all know why I told the Ingénue to tell Thea they had something in her teeth?
No. I thought you were just being ornery.
I was. I believe in reciprocity. Theo was rude, we were rude. Theo tried to take our power, we returned the favor. Nora was kind, we returned the favor. To give what we take and to take what is given. What has Lady Bluebeard given us? Tell me so that I know what we should give in return.
Well, I mean, she's given us a house. Sort of. I suppose in a way she's given us our trust as well, asking us to not go into her secret room. Although, also that feels a little bit of a trap. Just keep the key to yourself.
It seems like a test. Perhaps of the very trust that you just mentioned.
You've all told me that love does many things. Does love test, or is that a measure of control?
I rather think that love is tested, rather than gives tests.
I wonder what sustains this house. What makes that heart keep beating? Why does it beat so loud, and why is it so hungry for our fear?
All of these fantastic questions. I think we must go look in the room.
I agree.
I trust you.
And Fatale, as you perhaps begin to make your way towards the door of this room, I must ask, what token do you take with you? And is it a token of trust or distrust?
It is a token of distrust. It is the knife.
Beautiful.
I think, despite all of the mother's previous grievances, complaints, things that previously were called on by the rest of you as perhaps being overprotective in nature. I think now Mother seems worried, and as we walk out of this room, knife slipped onto our person. You hear Mother's voice say, "Are you sure we really want to do this? I am not scared of what we'll find, but quite literally, once we open that door, there's no going back. And I fear what might happen if we don't like what we find."
Yes, but don't we dislike what we've already found?
That is true. I don't like any of this.
Every room that we've gone into has unveiled a new type of horror upon our senses. And quite frankly, at this point, I'm just expecting another horror behind that room. But based on what Layla was saying, I think at the very least, we'll finally have all the knowledge we need to make a decision as to how our conversation will go with Lady Bluebeard and where we want to proceed from there. But no matter what, just remember, sisters, I am with you, and I will remain with you to the end.
I, too, love you all unconditionally. But I worry about what we plan on doing with the implements that we have gathered over the course of today.
I believe that will depend entirely upon that room.
Ingénue, do you want to go and see?
Well, and this might sound a bit dark, if there's a heartbeat, there's a heart, and we have two very sharp things. I might not know a lot, but I suppose I can do the math. I say we go. We can unleash the horror upon it in turn.
Be careful, Fatale. The Ingénue is coming to become a heartbreaker, too.
Never been prouder.
Here's I've been outvoted. So let's go.
You make your way up many flights of stairs to this small alcove, bones aching, back hurting, feeling faint and dizzy and weighed down literally by a force that almost seems outside your body, but you climb. And perhaps out of breath, you reach this door. You hear this heartbeat. It's grown louder and louder as you've ascended all the stairs. And you find yourself fingering that small, plain blue key. And Fatale, I think you will now share the ring with all of your sisters, but it is your hands that hold this key and that put it in the lock. And tell me, is there anything you express, anything you do as you unlock this door?
I think I take a moment and I kind of embrace the shared breath I imagine all of us taking together. Putting one hand on the door, feeling for that kind of distinct coldness or any other kind of outlying temperatures, just to prepare myself for what might be inside. feeling my pulse quicken, hearing the pumping and beating of this heart within. And then turn the lock and open.
I should say, first of all, the door was very plain itself. Cool, made of dark wood, with a tarnished brass handle that, as you turn it just out of the corner of your eye, you almost think it's in the shape of a skull. And inside, you open the door to find a room lit by 3 high, small windows, through which light is streaming down onto a very old stone floor. There are stains on this floor, and they appear faintly red, though it's impossible to say exactly what made them. There are portraits hung on the walls of the room, several women and feminine-appearing people in fashions that were popular around 200 years ago, some from the last century and some that seem far more recent. And of the recent-looking portraits, one woman is seated in a wheelchair, one reclines on a daybed covered in blankets, and one uses a hearing aid to listen to a songbird perched on her shoulder. And the floor of this room is bare, save for the one thing. In the middle of the room, lying on the cold flagstones, there is a bloodless, beating human heart. At first, perhaps a disturbing object, but the more you look, there's something pitiful about it. And in this moment, where are each of you? Where are your heads at as you take this in?
Even as sort of jaded as she's become throughout this journey, there is still that glimmer of curiosity that's honed towards safety rather than recklessness. She's, like the bonsai, I suppose, changed a bit to fit the circumstance that she and her sisters are in, and the bride's eyes flit between portrait to portrait, taking in every detail that she can see.
And I think what you make out are a group of women and people sometimes aligned with womanhood who made the best of a very bad situation, or who made the best of a situation that in other circumstances wouldn't have been bad at all, if they had been provided what they needed, if they'd been cared for reciprocally. But they had to try to thrive in a place that was ultimately harsh, in a ground that didn't want their roots to go down too far. And that's what you see in the lines of each of their faces in these portraits, in the way that their bodies come together, in the way that the portraits seem so out of place in this cold room where nobody comes.
I think that really stands out to Mother, and I think you all hear her inner thoughts indicating the portrait of the passed on wife who was a wheelchair user. And I think you hear Mother inwardly draw attention to the fact that this entire house is pretty much all stairs. And I think the innate feeling of frustration and the empathy for this woman we didn't even know, but who I can only imagine how she felt. And I think in this moment also, Mother is realizing how much our wife seemed to want her wives to depend on her. For when I look at us, we didn't come from much. We left behind everything we had to be with her. We don't have money or status or anything. This life in this house, it is foreign to us. And I think that realization is pulling at our gut. And it feels like our feet are rooted in quicksand, binding us here. And Mother stares at this heart, beating, almost that steady sound, I think seems to echo in this room of stone, this cold room. And I think she looks around at the four of you and says, "This is a bit ironic, is it not? Look at that. So vulnerable on the ground. This cold, cold room. It's eerie, isn't it? A reflection of, well, everything about everything we have learned today about the woman we chose to marry.
If this is where and how she keeps her own heart, what would she do with ours?
Lady Bluebeard wants us to depend on her, and the witch looks at the Animus with this adoration. And we did not let her carry us up the stairs.
And I think at this exact moment, you hear footsteps on the stairs behind you, quickly approaching. And you hear a gasp as someone realizes this door is open. And then you hear the familiar voice of your wife saying, "What the hell are you doing in this room?"
Think at that. The Animus is actually, quick question. Who's currently riding this Gundam? Who's driving?
I think it's anybody's for the taking.
Okay.
The Fatale has backed away from the heart, but their hand is wrapped around, in their mind, their hand is wrapped around the knife.
That's a good setup, because the Animus is going to just sort of turn around and give like the worst looking smile grin, and they're like, "Oh, hello, Lady Bluebeard. Darling, this is why I told you to put labels on these keys." And they're gonna grip the knife just a little bit tighter.
I specifically told you not to use this key or to come into this room.
You would withhold your heart from us, your bride.
That is not my heart.
Whose is it then?
I don't know. It's been here as long as I've been alive. Sometimes I dreamed that it was my own heart. Sometimes my heart seemed to beat with it. But I have my own heart in here. And that thing, that pitiful, terrible thing, it's not me.
I think Mother kind of, it seems we've been slipping the ring to each other this whole time, but I will gently take it and I will reach out with a hand for our wife's chest. I want to put a hand against her heart and just feel with our sensitive fingertips. And I want to feel her heart and compare it to the one that is on the floor, devoid of blood.
What you feel is that her heart is in her chest, beating, full of life, that it is struggling to make its own rhythm apart from this heart that's beating on the floor. That it's trying. It's there. There is fight left in it.
And I think having this information, Mother takes a step back from the front and I think just inwardly thinks a warning to the two of us who are gripping knives, metaphorically or not. And I think she just says, "Careful now."
Beloved. The witch will slip on the ring momentarily and take a step closer. Why did you not trust us with this room?
Because would you have come here if I told you? This place is haunted. When I trusted everyone else, it drove them away. When the others looked in here, whether with me or against my requests, it drove a knife through the heart of what we had.
And how long did they live after they saw this room?
One of them, only a matter of months. The other two, I don't know exactly when they had looked. They confessed it to me before they died. I thought that maybe this time would be different. I thought we could make something. That it could be normal.
You crave normalcy in a haunted house, and while I'm wearing the ring, I would like to caress a horror and caress the heart.
I think that means you roll, if I'm remembering.
Yeah. And I add my blood, which I have. Okay, 7 + 1 for 8.
So that means it's going to shift its attention if you participate in some way. So I'm going to ask all of you at this point to remind me who has received one of the little tokens. 1, 2, 3. If you would all like to spend your tokens on this, you may caress this heart and have it respond to the beating of your heart, to the direction that you wish to take things. So, Animus, Ingénue, and Witch, do you choose to spend your tokens to do this?
I do.
I do as well.
I do as well.
And I think, Witch, as you caress this heart, you feel that there is possibility here. That there's a story in this room that has ended in horror and in tragedy many times before, but that you have the power within you to effect a transformation. That as you have reached out to Nora and Layla, and perhaps even your wife in this moment, there is a possibility here to have something new grow in the compost pile that is this house, if you want to stay and try.
The witch remembers entering the solarium and thinking that Lady Bluebeard meant to cage us. And the witch realizes in this moment that they were wrong. They say aloud, "You see this house as a cage, but you could fly with me and we could make it our nest."
And slowly, she just reaches out her hand to you. Perhaps letting you see her in vulnerability and uncertainty and this desire to actually transform something for the first time. And I want us to end on this moment of her reaching out her hand, your fingertips maybe just brushing slightly, the future unwritten, and to ask each of you how you imagine the future will move forward.
I would like to come up behind the witch and just slip the ring on in front of you. And we hold hands with our wife, I think, with a new understanding. And in this vulnerability that we share together, I think after a truly exhausting day and all of our inward and outward questioning, I think Mother is realizing for the first time ever since we met this woman that while mistrust can protect us, and that was my intention the whole time, I think Mother realizes that in doing so, I perhaps have been too swift a judge. And now in control, I think I just lean against our wife, lean into her. And I like to imagine we stare at this heart together. And I would like to use my face smooth unconventionally for her. I chose the martyr. You take your love to the end of this world when you offer forgiveness for a sister's sins. I can take trauma to heal her. So what I would like to do is to instead do that for our wife.
Please mark one trauma. As your wife tightens her fingers around your own, And all of you get the sense that though you will decide ultimately whether you stay in this place with her or go wherever it is you want, something has changed in her in this moment. And just a small smile, truly a relieved smile, tugs at the corners of her lips.
And I think she responds, "You're welcome. Isn't that what love is? Unconditional. Always." And I think as Mother steps back to allow someone else to say something, I think she leans in for a gentle kiss on the cheek, which I think is one of the first times that Mother specifically has initiated affection for her.
Ingénue.
I think taking the ring in this tender moment, the Ingénue realizes that the world is filled with more than just extremes of trust and distrust, but something in between, something perhaps veering on the one side or the other, and maybe that's what love is. And I think, at least in this moment, what the Ingénue does with the ring is she takes the page of the poem from the library and gently, gingerly, like a nestling fallen out of a nest, takes the heart and says, "Perhaps there's more to this world than meets the eye. Perhaps this is not a heart, but a seed we can plant together." And I think in the future, maybe they plant the heart in the ground and trust each other to be there for each other for what happens.
As we plant the heart together in a garden well tended, the witch with the ring on their finger will use their face move again, and in so doing take their third trauma, and therefore shatter. They will ask the heart as they bury it alongside Lady Bluebeard, "What were you, and what will you be?" And as they ask that, a piece of the witch breaks and changes. I cannot go back to how I was, yet in this change I gain something new. I transform. And in so doing, the witch becomes the gardener. And what does the heart turn into?
I think the heart turns into a bonsai tree that also somehow magically grows roses from its branches.
Oh, my darling. Look what love can bear. It's thorny fruit. And they'll pick a rose for her and hand it to her.
I think that leads me to ask, Fatale, how do you imagine the story ending and moving into the future?
I think from the shot of this rose kind of delicately caressing Lady Bluebeard's skin, the pan out is kind of like a collage of very tasteful images of them cuddling and nuzzling and making love, and deciding for themselves together what making love means, what showing love means. the bride just opening up her heart fully to give an example of what love could be, so that Lady Bluebeard can in turn mirror that until she can find it for herself. And I think that passion continues to kind of build as the darkness and kind of dourness begins to lift from the house as a new day begins to dawn.
Which I think leaves the Animus sort of ending how we began. So for the Animus, I think with everything that's happened and everything that's gone on and the changes in ways in which not only my sisters have changed, but our wife has changed as well. I think seeing that bonsai tree and its petals and how it is thriving outside puts a project idea in the Animus's mind. And so I sort of see the Animus, of course, immediately getting the floor plan of the manor and just no nonsense with their wife being like, honey, I love you. Truly, I do. We have to make some changes in this house. One, there are too many stairs. There are not enough doors. This house is a fire trap. Also, I want to fix a few things. And so what they would like to do is to go back to that garden room with a sledgehammer, and they are going to smash all of those windows in order to then remake them so that they are more accessible and easier to open. And I think also redecorate them so that they're a little prettier. I think they try to repurpose most of the glass that they shattered. They retumble them, I believe is the term, to turn the glass into new colored types of glass so it makes various shapes and colors. I think definitely in the corner of one of the windows, one of the shapes is definitely a little bonsai in the exact shape as the one that they found when they first went in. But I'd say pretty much as soon as they finish that project, they're like, great, now to start, ripping up the carpet and knocking down some walls and installing some sturdier banisters on the stairs, the ones that will remain.
And on that note, I think we leave the bride and Lady Bluebeard in this garden that they are transforming with some compost heaps and some beautiful blooms that are coming into blossom.
So I'm Basil. I was the Animus for this fun little jaunt into a house of horrors that, turned kind of into a rom-com at the end. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as @Kabanyatana. You can find me everywhere else: Tumblr, Pillow Fort, Blue Sky, Wibbler, other places I'm forgetting as just @Kobanya. And I've got a website, towerofbasil.wordpress.com, but you can find me everywhere.
Hi, I have been Candace the Magnificent. You can find me at the Candace Marie on Twitter and Blue Sky, at Candace the Magnificent everywhere else. I'm a voice actor and TTRPG performer and writer and occasional sensitivity consultant. Get at me on my socials if you would like to see more of me or book me for anything. You can also hear me in the podcasts Frequencies, which is coming soon, Bloom and Blight, which is a Girl by Moonlight podcast, as well as Otherworld Hollywood, a 50s themed Call of Cthulhu campaign.
Hello, I am Keegan, and I was the Ingenue. You can find me on pretty much any social media site at Steadfast Petrol, where I make art and overall engage in the wondrous joy of creation, which included this. I can be found on the podcasts Warding Bond, Wicked World, and Eerie, an audio drama. So check that out, y'all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nala or Jay. My pronouns are they, them, and I have been the mother. You can find me online at Nala Woo and at Nala Draws if you want to see my art. I am also on every other social media that I have as at Nala Draws as well, and that includes Instagram and TikTok and Blue Sky, etc., 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 etc. I am an art director and illustrator. I work full time in TTRPGs doing some freelance work. I have a lot of really exciting projects coming up, some really cool stuff that I'm art directing for, but I have no idea when this is coming out, so I'm not sure what I can say. But you can keep watching my socials to see all the projects that I am working on. Besides art, I'm also a sensitivity consultant, voice actor, and TTRPG actual play stream performer. You can see me on shows like Last of Eden's Vices, which is a Vampire the Masquerade show set in Providence, Rhode Island. It's over on Goblets and Gaze in both podcast and VOD format. I play a sad, wet cat of a vampire who doesn't want to be a vampire in the first place and is against every typecast I've ever played. Kind of the comic relief of the group, and is gifted kid burnout person who wants nothing to do with the big prophecy that Z is apparently a part of. So it's that energy, you know. And also Itaewon by Night. We are the first and only all Asian cast to play VTM on stream. We have 2 seasons out, so go check that out. I play a girl boss. And I'll pass it on, not last but not least, to Button.
Hello, I am Button. My pronouns are they, them. You can find me at Blue Button on social medias like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, those places. You can find me on Sundays over on twitch.tv/Tales Archived in the Known Realms Telesh campaign. And you can find me in the post-apocalyptic campaign Unearthed Inheritance on Stealthy Elf Productions. And various and sundry other places, some mini campaigns on Dice Cream Sandwich, and some things I can't talk about yet. Thank you so much for having me here. This is the first time I've gotten to truly play with all of you, and you're all so wonderful.
Ditto.
I'm Esther. I use she and she pronouns. I have been your groundskeeper. I am everywhere on the internet, social medias, at Dungeon Minister. I am the GM of a Pathfinder 2e actual play called Chromythica, and it has been just my delight to play with all of you. Thank you so much for creating this story with me, and thank you, our audience, for being in this story with us. It's just wonderful. Ah! This has been a Numinous production.